couple of years into learning about this particular topic with yourself, I think it's easy to come to the conclusion that everybody knows or has rather heard the word executor and even can pronounce it correctly. But the reality is it is jargon, isn't it? It is jargon.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, it's important jargon though.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Just a quick point, Hassan. Sorry, we hadn't actually gone live, so I mean, so we were on the radio, but we weren't on Facebook or YouTube. So I don't know if you want. We are now live, so I don't know if you want to give a quick intro again, very brief, as to what we're talking about, what the show is.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so Alhamdulillah, we have a weekly show. I'm Hassan, who's the host, and Mohammed answers sort of questions around will writing, specifically in the UK. So today we're going to be talking about executors, trustees, and guardians. Now, in the last few sessions, we looked at obviously inheritance, we looked at English wills, Islamic wills, covered many different topic areas. So if you are sort of tuning in on Facebook or YouTube, you can see there are previous shows that have been recorded, which have covered those topics as well. And today, Mohammed and I are going into the topic of Islamic wills, specifically executors, trustees, and guardians. So Mohammed just quickly touched upon what an executor is. Essentially, from what I got, it's someone who takes care of executing your wishes according to what is what you've specified, and to what is in compliance with UK law. Now, Mohammed said it's absolutely. I'm going to testing my knowledge here, Mohammed, but Mohammed said it's absolutely compulsory and obligatory to have one in your will, because they need to be able to apply for probate and carry out your wishes. Now, Mohammed, I want to ask you, what is a trustee? Because I often hear this word being thrown around as well, and it's, for me, it's very different. I find it difficult to differentiate between the two.
Yeah, sure.
I see people, assign your executor and trustee, and then they give a brief explanation of each, but I can never. I cannot get around to understanding the difference between the two. So, if you can, in simple, plain English, just explain to me, because I find it difficult, what the difference is.
Yeah, I mean the roles are very different. Okay, so the executor, he will he will execute your wishes, right? And so, if you have a very simple will, so X goes to this person, Y goes to this person, Z goes to this person, then executor's job is to wind up your estate, get grant of probate, and then from whatever, let's just say that he doesn't own any property, but he just has money in the bank. Okay, so he's got £100,000 in the bank, and he's splitting it equally between the three. So executor's job is to get the grant of probate, go to the bank, say, look, I'm the executor, give us all your money, give us the money, and then he will give X 33,000, Y 33,000, Z 33,000, right? That's the executor's job done on that particular will there, right? Now, a trustee only comes in if a trust has been written in the will. So if a trust clause has been written in the will, then you will require trustees. And there are various trusts which can be written into a will. The most common type is known as a discretionary trust. And as the name suggests, the trustees of that will have of that trust have a discretion as to how the money or the estate or whatever is left will be distributed. So let me give you an example, right? And often we use these discretionary trusts in Islamic wills, and I'll explain the reason why as well. So, Mr. Tom, right? He writes his will, and he leaves £100,000 again, and he leaves in a discretionary trust, right? And his trustee is, Mr. John. So upon Mr. Tom's passing, Mr. John, right? He will now have the discretion to do what he pleases with the money which has been left over by Mr. Tom. And so you might say, well, hold on, what's the purpose of that? That sounds a bit pointless. It's not really a will, is it? But you see, in Islamic cases, it's more interesting, more relevant. So we know, as we spoke about in previous shows, that when you pass away, different people will inherit different amounts from you. Now, I'd say it's a living calculation, meaning that at any time, those people that may inherit from you can change, right? Why? You might have another child, somebody who's going to inherit may pass away, and you may not have time to change your will, right? For example, right? Now, in a situation like that, what would happen is that the amounts that you've written in your will, they would not be accurate. Why? Because Islamically, the situation has changed. So if we have a basic example, right? You have a father, wife, and a son, right? So upon your passing, father is going to inherit 1/6, wife is going to inherit 1/8, and son is going to inherit the remainder, right? Now, if before you pass away, the father dies, right? Example's not the best one actually, but if your father dies, right, before you pass away, then the father is not going to inherit. See, so the son's going to inherit more. That's not the best example actually, because we need another inheritor who's also going to inherit as well, a fixture. Okay, but the point being that the amounts that were written in your will, okay, they would no longer be accurate. They'd no longer be accurate. Why? Because the divisions in the shares have changed. So what would happen then is that if you put it in a discretionary trust instead, then and you leave a letter of wishes, then the letter of wishes will say that I want my estate to be distributed by according to Sharia. So then upon your death, the money goes into discretionary trust, and the trustee will then hopefully, looking at your letter of wishes, say, okay, I know how this has to be distributed now, and we'll distribute it accordingly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, pretty much. So I think what helps is the letter of wishes. I think that helps acts as a piece of guidance really for the trustee, as far as as an Islamic will is concerned anyway. Because because like you mentioned, there has to be an equal, fixed amount of shares prescribed to each relative. Now, if the will is trust based, would there need to be an executor assigned as well, or just a trustee?
Yeah, so there is an executor as well, because see, the executor is the one who's going to be getting the grant of probate. He still needs to get the grant of probate. So what would happen is literally you have an executor, and often in these sort of basic wills, the executor and trustee are the same person, right? So they've got the executor hat on upon the passing, and then once they've done probate, right, they then put their trustee hat on, and now they're acting as trustee. You see? So you
Right.
got the
Okay.
same person who's playing a dual role.
Right. Okay. Okay. I got you. And is there a case where you say when it's I guess a simple will, but is there a scenario where there should be or needs to be two separate or a different set of people assigned as executors and trustees, or do you
Yeah,
recommend just
I mean,
having having the same
yeah,
person?
you can do. A lot of it depends on the complexity of the estate and the will, and whether or not. So if generally, if you're going to choose your spouse and your adult children, or your brother or someone, close family member as your executor, right, and trustee, that only really works if they are what's the way, if they're literate. They have to be literate, and I don't mean complete, complete, but they have to be able to, use a bit of technology, fill in forms, have basic understanding of maths in your estate, and you see, because these aspects are required when you look going through probate, because you're going to be totaling up the value of the estate. So if the person, for example, let's say that they've got various businesses and properties and share portfolios, etc., then yeah, you might want to consider having a professional executor who will be able to deal with that estate, and get the probate and deal with the companies and the various other things that are going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. Okay, that makes sense. But generally speaking, if it's not too complicated, and again, if they
Yeah.
are, like you said, if there's a letter of wishes, it's a trust-based will. Generally, the same people can be executors and trustees. How many executors and trustees should one assign in a will?
It's always useful to have two, simply because one may become incapacitated or unable to act for any particular reason. I mean, you can imagine an example like we're going through now, really, where you got only one executor, but he's gone to Pakistan and he's stuck there, or as the case may be, India now, and he's stuck there and he can't return to deal with your estate, and we don't know how long he's going to be interned in India for. You see what I mean? But if you had a second executor, he'd be able to crack on with the job.
Right. Okay. I got you. And can they be? You mentioned it could be your family friend, someone who you trust, someone who's, I guess, both tech smart and also financially literate as well. I think that goes a long way. But can it be somebody who is a legal heir, or even somebody who's inheriting from part of your wasiya, which is the third
Yeah,
that you can give?
yeah. Executors can be anyone.
Okay. And what
Executors can
about,
be
could they be
anyone.
your witnesses that signed the
Your
will?
witness, your witnesses, yeah, they could be your executors, so long as, because don't forget, your witnesses can't be a beneficiary. You see,
Right. Okay.
so
Okay.
so so yeah, so you can't have your cake and eat it.
Yeah, but they can be your executors and trustees.
They can, yes. Although
Okay.
if you're using close family for your executors and trustees, then you won't be able to get them to be your witnesses, would you?
Yeah, because obviously they're inheriting, aren't they? Okay.
Exactly,
Got
yeah.
you.
So that's why generally you won't find that happen.
Okay. Okay. So you've discussed executors, you've discussed as trustees and sort of the differences between them. Um,
Yeah. So I just go through sort of the main role of the executors and sort of the main
yeah, I
jobs
was
they
gonna
have to
say,
do.
if you
Yeah.
could list out what the main roles are, I think it'd be
Yeah.
really helpful because
And
um,
yeah. Carry on.
no, go ahead.
So and this is, you see, this is one of the reasons why it's important to have a will, because when I'm going to mention these duties that executor does now, right, then you're going to realize, actually, when I pass away, all of this has to be done, so I'm going to need an executor, right? So the first one is registering the death, right? So when somebody passes away, the death has to be registered. That doesn't have to be done by an executor. That can be done by anyone, right? Anyone can register the death, and get the green, I think they call it the green form or something, right? Secondly, is to get copies of the will. So the executive's job now is to find the will, the original will, and to obviously find any copies as well. Um, Arranging the funeral, okay, it doesn't have to be the executor. You have Muslim burial services will arrange the funeral, but valuing the estate is important. So we value the estate. Why? Because you're going to have to go through HMRC. You're going to have to go through Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs to see whether or not there's any tax payable on the estate. So that's why they want you to value the estate to see whether there's any tax payable or not. Um, Also, the executor now has to take responsibility for property and post, right? So any post to the deceased person now has to be dealt with. And again, so that's why we say, like, close family is probably best for executor. Why? Because they might still be living in the house and the post is still coming to them, so they can deal with it quite easily. And then, of course, applying for probate. And so valuing the estate will play a part in when you apply for probate. That includes sorting out the finances, and then distributing the estate. So assuming that it's not going into a trust, and assuming you're going to be distributing, even if it's like going into a trust, but you're going to have let's say you got the wasiya and you're leaving 1/3 to literary traditional learning, for example, right? Then that amount will be given out by the executor at that stage before it enters into a trust. Paying any inheritance tax. So actually inheritance tax actually has to be paid before you're given the grant of probate. So assume, and again, so when your estate goes into a trust, right, you don't have to pay any inheritance tax at the time, but you know those calculations are dealt with within 2 years of the death. So one has to be aware of that. Again, dealing with any other assets as well. So a lot of it's kind of financially based, dealing with property assets, dealing with institutions such as banks and pension companies, mortgage companies if they've got a mortgage. There's various things one has to deal with, and that's why, to be honest, the simpler your life is, the simpler your finances are, the better it is for everyone. This is, I mean, I'm not going to go on too much of a rant, Hassan, don't worry. But often we make life much more complicated than it has to be. And in doing so, we make it complicated for everyone else as well. Whereas really, if we lived simpler lives, then we wouldn't have a lot of these difficulties and issues that come afterwards. But we do live quite complicated lives nowadays. But yeah, so essentially that's the role of the executor.
Right. Okay. I mean, you touched upon a lot of things there actually, and I have a few questions on the back of that. Now, you mentioned valuing the estate. So, this is just purely at the moment the executor's role, right? Not the trustee's role. So, what does the estate actually include? When I hear estate, I just think of property straight away. Is that all it is?
Sure. I mean, generally, you're looking at anything of any value. So I mean, HMRC, they're not going to be interested in the knickknacks that are inside the house. Really, they're interested in property value of cars, any major jewelry, money in the bank. That's what they're interested in.
Right. Okay. And you also mentioned that there is, if it is a trust-based will, then it goes into a trust after the executor has been granted the probate. Now, what does the trust is the trust like a bank account? Is it a room? What is it like? What is how does one
Yeah,
put money into a trust?
yeah, that's
If
good.
that makes
I
sense.
mean,
I was confused
yeah,
about that.
sure. Maybe the terminology so is a bit misleading. So you don't put it into trust. It's held in trust. Okay. And so the trustees will quote unquote hold it in trust. It stays where it is. It doesn't have to go anywhere. It's just that now the trustees will basically deal with it in the way that they're meant to deal with it.
So they basically claim that responsibility,
Yes.
but so the
Yes.
executor would then say to the trustee, because this was a trust-based will, you are now responsible for this particular trust. And I guess, is that done in writing or is it done, verbally?
No,
How
no,
does that?
that's the will. The will creates that trust.
Okay, I get you. So
You've
that's why
written it in the
okay,
will. Yeah,
right, okay, and
interesting.
that's how the will is legally binding. Okay,
I believe that the concept of trust is actually an Islamic concept which has been brought into English law, because we have the concept of amana. A trust is an amana. So when you give someone an amana, a trust, then they have to deal with that, right? And it's a very Islamic concept. And so they say, Prophet adda al-amana, that he delivered the trust. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entrusted the Prophet with the religion, and the Prophet he gave that trust to he dealt with that trust effectively and truthfully. That's a side
yeah,
note.
subhanallah, that's a very good point you make, and amana could just not be, it could not just be limited to money. It could obviously be limited to someone who's actually trusted you to carry out a particular task or a project. Like you say, Allah entrusted the Prophet ﷺ to carry out his mission, and he delivered that amana. So yeah, that's beautiful. This is why, alhamdulillah, this is, I love it when we, just on a side note, when we find little gems that actually translate from the things that we already know and are rootly inherited in Islamic law, which are elaborated and acted upon in English law. I think it's quite magical, to be honest, mashallah. So if you do have any more pearls
Well, we're going to ad break in less than a minute, so let me give you another one, right? So the word admiral.
Right. Yeah.
Admiral. Do you know what's an admiral?
Admiral,
Yeah.
when you admire something or someone.
No. Admiral in the Navy.
Oh, I don't know then. My apologies.
An admiral, right? He's the Lord of the Sea, right?
Right. Okay.
That's his title. He's like one of the highest members of the Navy. So
Right.
admiral comes from the Arabic, right, which was originally Amir al-Bahr, the Amir of the sea, right, the Lord of the sea.
Right.
And Amirul Bahar became shortened to Admiral in English
Subhanallah.
at the time of the
Wow.
Crusades. Okay, we're going to go to
Wow.
Arabic now, so have a little muse on that.
Where we
Inshallah.
know that there can be a virus, whatever that virus is, whether that's COVID-19 or the flu, and that virus may not necessarily affect two people exactly the same way. And the reason for that has to do with something called the immune system. It's the body's ability to fight off that intruder, in a sense, that challenge. And people who have a strong immune system are able to handle a virus that would otherwise destroy another person who had a compromised immune system. Similarly,
Okay, I don't know what happened there. It sounded like an interesting talk, but it
What
wasn't.
it sounded like was a very short ad break.
It wasn't. It wasn't the ads, unfortunately. But just for those who are interested in the ads, we've got Caprina's Pizza, we've got Muslim Global Relief, Families Relief, Desert Island, and yeah, those are pretty much the adverts, inshallah. So you didn't miss out on too much. I say we've heard them before. We've heard them many times, alhamdulillah. My kids have learnt the adverts off by heart now. So it's how much we listen to the radio. Normally, to be honest, on a school run, when we're driving to school, we'll catch at least one set of adverts on the way to school. So they pretty much learn the adverts. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. So Admiral car insurance, right? The main character when you see all of the imagery.
No, actually, the sea captain. Yes.
Yeah. There you go. That's the Admiral. Amirul Bahar. Right, the Lord of the Sea, and that has been taken from the Crusaders took that concept from the Muslims at the time around Salahuddin's time, and it entered into our English lexicon as a result. So there we are.
I think there are actually quite a few of those. I mean, I don't suppose you recall other examples, but there are many words in the English language that have rooted from Arabic.
Yeah.
Right?
There are loads. Like jumper. The jumper you wear. Why is it called jumper? What's it jumping for? So I mean, it makes no sense, right? It comes from jubba. The jubba. If you think of a jumper, it's a short jubba, isn't it?
Yeah.
The jubba that we wear has been anglicized into the word jumper over time.
Subhanallah. That's good. I think we could probably dedicate a whole show just on similarities within the language, mashallah.
You know what? Yeah, someone should do like a web page or a book or something, with the words, Arabic words that have been taken into the English language.
Yeah.
Like
sugar.
There's your
next project.
Sugar, sukkar. Sugar in Arabic is from sukkar. Sugar in English, right? Is from sukkar in Arabic. Coffee is from kahwa. And I'll give you one more, which was in my mind. It seems to have vanished now, but there was another one which I had in my head, but it's gone. Okay, but there are quite a few, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So if you do have any questions, we are discussing executors, trustees and guardians today. So if you do have any questions on this particular subject, you can WhatsApp your question actually to 07591 970 241. Is that they can do that, can't they, Mohammed? They can WhatsApp the questions.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, I'll repeat that: 07591 970 241. Right, Mohammed. Just before we move on to the next set of questions around guardians, actually, you mentioned that the executor would need to apply for probate. Now, would the executor need to pay for it from their own pocket, or how would that work? Is there a cost involved?
Yeah. So for probate.
Yeah, because if the executor is sort of having to do it, can they use the money from the estate to do it? Or?
Yeah, they would pay for it, but then they would claim that money back. So the thing is a £215 charge for probate.
And they'd claim it back from the estate or the trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, from the estate. Yeah.
And who'd work out the actual inheritance?
I figured out how to get the ads on the ads on. Okay, fine. It's okay. Leave now. Karen, sorry. I was just trying to fill with the ads. All right,
That's fine.
carry on.
If who'd actually work out the inheritance tax? Because obviously you said that they need to calculate it now. If somebody doesn't know what the tax rate is for inheritance, law.
So it's
and
not, yeah.
bits,
So
do
they
need an
don't need
accountant?
to. No, they don't need to worry about that. They just need to count it all up. Trust me, HMRC, they'll work out the tax for you.
Okay.
But I think so. Next week's show, we're going to be looking more at inheritance tax and sort of, I guess, because it's our last show next week, so we'll be then mopping up, any loose concepts as well.
Oh, okay, excellent. So people often worry about their children. Once they're gone, who's going to take care of my children? They want. I mean, surely somebody who has. I mean, I don't have any children yet, but Mohammed, you do, mashallah. And surely in your mind, even if you hadn't created a will, you'd already have in your mind the ideal person or someone within your, family circle that you'd actually like for them to take care of your children if you were to go. And you probably had these conversations as well. If I do die, please make sure that you take care of my children, right? I verbally, these things must have been mentioned. Now, what can we do to avoid this worry, to avoid this, I guess, not planning ahead? What can someone do with the with using a will to benefit them?
Yeah, I don't think many people will have really thought about that, to be honest. It's not something that people really contemplate. And now you have to remember that when you pass away, your spouse, right, will automatically be the legal guardian of the child anyways. So this concept of guardians or someone to take legal responsibility of your children who are under 18 only really comes into play when both parents pass away. And of course, that can happen. It can happen quite easily. And so it is a conversation which should be had. Most people that I've come across who fail to finish their wills is because they can't decide on the guardians, right? So the mother and father of the child, they will maybe not come to terms with who should look after the children. So you have to look at it from those two perspectives. One of them, if the mother passed away, the father is automatically the guardian. But if the father passed away, who's going to look after the children, and vice versa, right? If the father passed away and then the mother passed away, who's going to look after the children? They may have a different idea as to who's going to look after them. It's very important discussion to have, Hassan. Very important discussion to have, especially if you have young children, because a guardian may have to look at Allah protect people, but if someone passes away and their child is 3-4 years old, right, and both parents pass away, then what? Someone's got to raise that child for another 14 years, perhaps, right? So it's a big responsibility, and we live in a sort of society now where everyone's after themselves, and unfortunately, people, they would be quite put out at having another mouth to feed. Again, these sort of concepts are very fascinating. You look at Ali ibn Abi Talib, right? Now, where did he grow up?
Where did he grow up? Under the was it the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu
Yeah,
who
but
looked
why?
after him, right?
Yeah, why?
I'm assuming because his parents passed away.
Nah, Abu Talib was alive. He's the son of Abu Talib, isn't he? Ali ibn Abi Talib.
Right.
His father
yeah.
was alive, right? His father couldn't afford to look after him.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Right.
You know what? You mentioned that now. I actually remember. See, I actually remember reading that now. Now that you mentioned it.
and the same with Ja'far. Ja'far, okay. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. He went and I believe he was raised by Al Abbas, okay, one of the Prophet's uncles. So because why? Because Abu Talib at the time he couldn't afford to raise those two children of his. And of course, look, there's a divine wisdom to that. Of course, Ali radiallahu anhu growing up in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, it goes without saying. But look how in that society, just taking on people's children. In fact, to be honest, I have so my day job, quote unquote, is I'm an immigration lawyer, and I have many clients who are from West Africa, especially Ghanaians, and the way that they will raise their nephews and nieces as if they're their own children, right? And often, to be honest, it causes me a bit of difficulty because they act like they are their own children, and then it turns out later that they're not. So when you
Yeah.
start telling them, look, you need to get DNA, it's like, but look, I'll give you an exact situation which happened, right? Let's say a hypothetical situation could happen. So X person makes an application, right? Because they believe them to be someone's children. Okay. Applications refused. Say to them, look, it'd be easy if you get DNA, and they say, okay. And then you speak to that person's relative and say, oh, why are they not getting DNA done? Da, da, da. And then that person speaks to them and says, why are you not getting DNA done? Da, da, da. And it turns out that even their own family doesn't know that it's not their children, that it's their nephews and nieces. But they've been looking after them and just not they've treated them just like their own children. They're not even told their extended family that it's not their children. You see what I mean? Like in terms of how communities tend to come together. It doesn't happen here in the West. In the West, subhanAllah, we're very much in it for ourselves. But that's why this conversation on guardianship is so important, because what's the alternative? The alternative is that the local authority are going to look for people to look after your children, right? And so you need to have those conversations with family members and say, look, if me and my wife and I, if we pass away, are you able to look after the children, right? We're going to, we have this amount of money, equity in our house, which will go towards, their upkeep, etc., right? That's a real conversation which people have to have, because otherwise, let's say you don't do that, you both pass away, who's going to pick up the kids? People, they're not prepared. They're not gonna. Then nowadays, look, someone passed away, they got 3 kids, right? 3 kids. So I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just thinking about it, but it's also having these conversations as well, with
Yeah.
those that you hold near and dear to you. So essentially, if you want to avoid the courts deciding who takes care of your children, have a will in place, in other words, right? And have the guardian stipulated in there. And does one go about putting multiple guardians in the will, or how many guardians should they put in the will?
I mean, you can have one, okay, but again, it's like the executors and trustees. If they may predecease you, right? They may become incapacitated, incapable of looking after your children. So it's good to have an alternative, a substitute guardian as well, right? Who can step up if the need arises, right? And the other thing as well, we often forget this, Hassan, is the importance of ensuring that our guardians understand our religious sensibilities as well. Yeah. And I don't mean that you're Shafi and that your guardians are Hanafis and it's going to be a problem. I don't mean in terms of that, okay, or that they are some more spiritually inclined, some are more austere and take black and white. So I don't mean from that perspective, but just the fact that that the person is religiously inclined, very important. You might spend a long time trying to raise your children to be good young Muslims, and they go to a house where that person hasn't got that Islamic concept. And what's going to happen to your children then? That's a very important issue, because in reality, if we truly care for our children, then people, they will spend stacks of money buying them, buying a 5-year-old child a £90 pair of trainers, which they're going to grow out of within a few weeks, probably, if not less, right, or more. £500, PlayStations and all the games, like all of these things. They will invest so much money in their tuition fees and this and that, but and they want them to be good Muslims, but then they don't even really consider actually, if we both pass away, who's going to look after them? Have we even put something in place for that? And even in your will, you can stipulate details about how you want your children to be raised, okay? How you want your guardians to look after them. But you should even write this down when you choose your guardian. You should write this down and say, look, this is what I want my children to be. I want him to be, to go to this madrasa. I want him to be hafiz. I want him to do the, whatever you want your child to do, okay? You should put that so your guardian knows. Very important. I haven't done that. I mean, I've got guardians, but I haven't told them exactly what I want my child, how I want them to raise my child. Something which I need to consider doing myself now, to be honest.
Could you also include this inside of the will as well as telling them, so that they have a reminder there? Because I think the last thing you want to do is just shock someone into, you are now you're getting a letter through the door saying you are now the guardian of such and such child without even them knowing, right? So I guess having these conversations and even seeking permission.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, it'd be the executor that obviously deals with the guardian. So it wouldn't be like the court send them a letter or something. You have to look after.
Yeah, I know. I was being hypothetical. Yeah.
But yeah, no, of course. I mean, these conversations have to be had, and the guardians have to be forewarned and foretold. And like I said, if you have specific wishes, etc., you can put them in the will, but you don't want to, wills should be kept simple where possible. You don't want to, muddy the waters too much. But this is something separately which you could write down, you could give to your guardians, okay, or keep with your wills as instruction for the guardians, okay, and sort of just let them know how, what you want from them, and also how you're going to finance it. If you want your kid to go to some fancy school, then you better have a way of financing it.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Now, with the just very quickly going back to executors, my apologies, I should have asked you this before, but it's just something that sprung to mind. You mentioned that they would need a copy of the will now, or they need to find a copy of the will. But does one, once created their will, do they have to send it to them or give them a copy, or how do they know where it is going to be, if that makes sense?
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. So the executor will need the original will for probate purposes. Now, the executor, again, you don't have to give an executor a copy of the will, right? But it's sensible to do so, and it's very important to ensure the executor knows where they will find the original will. I mean, there's so many stories, right, where someone's passed away and the executors can't find the will. So many stories where that occurs. They literally turn the house upside down. They can't find the will, and then many years later they find it, stuck inside the spare tire of the car in the boot.
Wow, I don't know who'd put it there.
Safe place to hide it, but yeah, no, you want to make sure that people know where it is. And actually, just on a side, another, when you're talking about sort of being able to find things, one thing that's going to help the executors a lot is if you leave I guess a piece of paper or something with all of your passwords, your digital property as well. Because people may have, nowadays people have, bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies and all sorts of things. The executors will have to deal with all of that, and all that forms part of the valuation and everything as well, you see. So generally we talk about in terms of bricks and mortar and gold ingots and stuff, but actually there's a whole nother world out there of property. I mean, you've got these what is it, non-fungible somethings, tokens, NFTs, non-fungible, right? It's like, I just, I mean, I don't know what they are, but I just like the sound of them, non-fungible tokens. But that's like a whole, but it's all property which people can own, and so people should, you should have, don't share your passwords and stuff with people, right? But where you keep your will in the safe, keep a list of your passwords there, to your Yahoo account, your Gmail account, etc. Because there may be important documents in your email. Because you see, nowadays, don't forget, Hassan, we don't receive paper copies of things, right? A lot of what we have is by email. And again, people don't always have a printer, so they don't print them out, which means all of this important information is going to be in someone's email. And so somebody has to be able to access that, or the executive has to be able to access that to find these documents.
Yeah, spot on. Absolutely. And that's something I've been thinking about as well a lot, in terms of, you know, you might, like, I think we actually mentioned this last week, you know, you might have valuable pieces of content on your computer. It might not even be necessarily you know, part of the estate. It might not be cryptocurrency or whatever, because not, you know, let's face it, not the everyday person has, you know, cryptos lying around. But
Well,
it
you'll
could
be
generally
surprised
just be,
nowadays. You've got random heads who do all this sort of stuff with cryptos, to be honest.
yeah,
And then
no,
there's so many,
absolutely. But
like there's so many of them nowadays. You know, all these different companies out there shooting up doing all this sort of stuff.
yeah, absolutely, and yeah, but it could also be things which are of sentimental value as well. I think, you know, for example, writers or you know, people who journal or whatever it is, right? You know, why wouldn't you want somebody to? You'd want them you'd want to let them into all of these, I guess, personal memorabilia, sentimental things after you go.
Yeah.
You know, remember you.
So kind of you raise the issue of intellectual property. You see, so yeah, so you know, so people have intellectual property. You know, their writings, their articles, all these sort of things as well. Yeah. You know, access to websites, blogs, vlogs. You know, nowadays, you know, again, you know, people they are earning money from YouTube. You know, all of that sort of thing. So there's a whole new raft of considerations that one has to bear in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if it's things like even social media, you might need to disable certain social media channels or take
Yeah,
photos down and things like that.
yeah.
So it's
So
just
your executor is tasked with all of this.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, makes sense. Got it. Now, Mohammed, with regards to executors, guardians being overseas, so that's a question. So someone may trust somebody, a relative or a friend that's not necessarily residing in the UK. You know, they're permanently living in abroad. So can I choose somebody who's abroad to be my executor, my trustee, or my guardian, or my
That
child's
question
guardian,
comes
rather?
up. Yeah, that question comes up a lot. So the short answer is yes, you can. But then one has to also consider, and again, you know, sort of putting my immigration hat on, how easy it is for some people to come into the country, right? So you know, if you put your executor or your trustee or your guardian even, you know, as somebody, you know, who's from Pakistan, right? Then, you know, will they be able to get a visa easily to come into the country? How long may it take, right? How long can they stay for to be able to sort the affairs out? You know, if it's a child, you know, how easy will it be for that child to be able to relocate and live in another country? Right, that's a very important consideration as well. You know, will that child need a visa to go to that country? I mean, you can, you know, I mean, I mean, from the, you know, from the UK's perspective, right? You know, if there's if someone's you know, alone, you know, their parents have passed away in another country, and you say to yourself, "Oh, I'm the uncle. I'm going to bring that child to live with me in the UK." Good luck, right? Good luck, because Home Office are not about to let some foreign child into the UK. So I don't know how it is with other countries and our, you know, who are foreign children from their eyes. I don't know how easily they will let them into the country, you know. So
What about here
these
though?
considerations have to be made.
Sorry to interject, Mohammed. What if somebody wants to have somebody overseas looking after their child? As in,
But
could I send the child abroad?
that's what I'm saying. It completely depends upon that country's immigration laws.
Oh, right, okay.
You see, from our perspective, the Home Office would not want a foreign child here. So what's to say that that country would want a foreign child there?
Yeah, but I guess if you and even if you have done your research, you know, laws are constantly changing anyway. So it's not to say that, you know, at
Yeah.
the time you
But
did it,
ideally,
you know.
yeah. I mean, I've seen many wills where people have, you know, guardians, especially overseas, because, for example, this often happens where people are fairly recent migrants to the UK. They may not have established family here, and so their family will be back home, wherever back home is for that person. So yeah, so they may put a foreign guardian down. But yeah, I mean, executors and trustees, same sort of as we mentioned, ideally in the UK, simply because it's easier and quicker for someone to be able to deal with it whilst they're here.
Yeah, and I guess, like you say, it's quicker, easier, and that impacts other members of the family that are, who maybe want to put an end or a closing rather to the grief that they're probably suffering from. They don't want things to be, I guess, longed out, so to speak. So it is. I think it's just being mindful. And going back to what you said, really, just living a simple life, it makes things a lot easier, doesn't it? And just being mindful of these things in your will and who you assign as your executors, trustees, and guardians. So that sums up pretty much all the questions I had around this particular topic. But last week, mashallah, you mentioned that there is a platform called True Wills that you are reviewing wills on. So it is a platform that people can create a will in as little as 20 minutes. I wanted to ask, can they actually choose executors and trustees on there as well, or do you have different? How does it work on the actual portal?
Yeah, so True Wills, okay, it's like a UK's first. It's an Islamic online Islamic will portal, and so you can go on there, you can sort of sign up, you can put your details in there, and it will generate a will for you, right? According to English law and Islamic law as well. Now, with that one, you would, because it's for basic wills, so you would have your executor and your trustee as the same person in that one, but you would choose your guardians as well. And again, there's nothing to stop and again, the system is quite clever actually, because, for example, if you wanted your executor and trustee to also be your guardian, you don't have to put all their details in again, because it already has the details for when you put them in as the executor and trustee, and so it will automatically be able to choose that as your guardian and vice versa. So it's some pretty impressive technology that's going on behind the scenes there.
No, mashallah, that's good to hear. And I believe anyone who has questions on this particular subject or any of the subjects around wasiyas and will writing can actually contact you via the live chat on truewills.co.uk, can't they? So I believe you're available Monday to Friday.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we do have a lot of FAQs, blog posts. Inshallah, we're going to be increasing those such that you should be able to find the answer to most of your questions there. But yeah, of course, if it's not there, then yeah, you can get in touch, and we'll try to answer and deal with your question, inshallah.
Sounds good.
But,
Excellent.
But you know what? I mean, again, I can't impress enough upon anyone, if there is anyone listening, of the importance of writing a will in the UK. We kind of, I guess we've spoken about it in the first show and the second show, and we have to impress it upon people on this show. The reason why we're doing this, really, because again, you may think that this got to be probably maybe the most boring show on Ramadan FM. I wouldn't say that. I'd say and no offense, but I'd say if there was a show on accounting, I guess this could be running in with us as a boring show on Ramadan FM. Because wills it's not an exciting thing really. But it's a necessary, like taxes and accounts. It's not an exciting thing, but it's a necessary thing, you see. And so the reason for, I guess, these types of shows, rather than your banter on bikes type of shows, is that that these are again, in their call it was a public important broadcast or something, and this is something which is important for the Muslim community. You should have your will in place. You should have your will sorted, whether you're young or old, simply because it's an obligation for us to do so. Everyone owns something, and you've got to make sure that reaches its rightful owner upon your death. Because remember, once you die, whatever you own ceases to be yours. It now belongs to your inheritors, Islamically speaking. And if you do not facilitate, or if you rather I should say, if you put obstacles or barriers in it reaching its rightful owner, then you are potentially sinful for that. And that's going to it's going to chase you even after you passed from this earth. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also encouraging family and friends as well to really look into it.
yeah.
You
So
know,
we've got,
you
we've
have
got 20 seconds before the advert break.
Yeah, I'll wrap up anyway. But there's tons of information on truewills.co.uk around will writing, so feel free to check that out, inshallah. So jazakallah khair everyone for your attention and for coming onto the show this week. Next week is sadly our last show, but we will join you and be talking about avoiding inheritance tax. So yeah, we look forward to it. Take care, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
To all of our wonderful listeners of RFM, thank you so much for your support. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless each and every one of you during this blessed month of Ramadan.